Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to see you all. Hope you're having a wonderful afternoon. My name's Hayley McSpirit, and I lead our Microsoft partnership globally at Pax8. If you enjoy the conversation and the session today, please do stop by our booth later on. Come and say hello and learn more about Pax8. With that, I'm going to hand over to Angela Byers from Microsoft, who's going to introduce herself before we get into the session. Angela.
Thank you, Hayley. Hi, everyone, and thank you to all the partners in the audience for collaborating for such a long time with us to serve our customers. I'm Angela Byers, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Microsoft 365 Copilot, focused on the small and medium businesses. You've heard throughout the conference already about all of our Copilot innovation aimed to empower every employee with their AI personal assistant and to transform every key business process with Agent. And I'm personally just so excited at what that means for SMBs. It means Copilot democratizes expertise. So imagine that marketer in an SMB who can now, with their AI personal assistant, access expertise and knowledge and execution that are best in class in the industry. It also means Copilot enables scaling for SMBs like never before. If you caught the general session this morning, take what Jeff Teper introduced, the project manager agent. You have an autonomous agent that can do everything from plan creation to task execution. So now SMBs can grow their business without linearly scaling and increasing in staffing. So I'm just so excited to be on this journey with you to empower every SMBs with AI so that they can grow beyond today's expectations. So on that note, I want to introduce Eric and David from Pax8, who's going to share with you their expert perspectives.
Great. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for being here this afternoon. I'm David Powell, and this is Eric. And Eric Stevens is our Chief AI Officer at Pax8. If you don't know much about Pax8, we work with MSPs. And MSPs obviously work largely with the small to medium business. The entire genesis of this talk that we're going to give today was that I was out meeting with a lot of our MSP partners, and they were saying, hey, Dave, we've gone out and talked about AI briefly to some of our end users, and they're kind of scared. They're scared to death. They're, like, what is this? Is this going to be like some Terminator figure from the future coming in to, like, kill us all or something like that? And I'm like, no. So this whole genesis of this talk was like a hopeful future around AI, and we look forward to delivering this to you today. So you just met them, and now I'm going to hand it over to Eric to kind of bring you up to speed on what AI is.
So yeah, it's a great question. What is AI? We've talked about it for a long time, data science, artificial neural networks, machine learning, the list goes on and on. What it means to be AI has changed a lot over time, and now we're talking about large language models as the new category of AI in the world. I want to observe that when the iPhone came out, that was a revolutionary piece of technology. It did so much to change the world, but it wasn't the iPhone itself that necessarily changed the world. It was the ecosystem that it created. It was the applications and the new company opportunities that existed out there around it. You're sitting on a wealth of information, and you are able to begin to recontextualize that information in new ways in this new world, and you can access that information in whole new contextualized ways to inform your business decisions and improve your processes overall.
So I think it's one of these inconvenient truths is that everything actually is better. When you look at all the data, there's no real data points that you can find that show things are not better. Access to clean drinking water, birth rates, all these things are at the best they've ever been. But that's not really what our art presents us. What our art and our culture gives us lots of times is more of this, which is the famous Mac ad from the Super Bowl that year, which was this presentation, this kind of dystopian future where everyone's sitting, in the same thing, doing the same things, and then this iconoclast comes, and throws the hammer into the big screen and kind of breaks all the things up. But when we look at all this stuff, it seems to be this kind of scary future, and that's what our art often gives us. And so one of the problems around all of this is that we don't usually kind of think about second order effects of things, is that when we do something, we just kind of like immediately jump to like, oh no, that's scary, or oh, that might be bad, or oh, what's this going to do to the job market and all this kind of stuff. But there's all these other positive impacts that we always see that emerge, but the initial kind of naysayers are the ones lots of times that get their message out. So what we're already seeing is some very positive benefits of AI. Lots of times we kind of look at this and we're like, okay, great, we can do some more business things more effectively, we can do this a little more effectively, but we're already seeing things where like AI is able to look at mammograms and project and predict who's going to end up with breast cancer and who's not, so you can have early intervention. And when you look at things like that, you're like, okay, those are huge opportunities to change humanity for the better by using these large language models that can predict and see things that humans just simply don't have the ability to look at massive data sets and extrapolate these kind of fine-tuning things. And AI can do that, for us. And it is one of these rare areas where the benefit is palpable and easily seen.
So a lot of tech doesn't have an incredibly clear ROI, but if you spend any time with generative AI, it becomes increasingly obvious to you the longer that you use it that benefit's there, and it's up to you to realize that potential inside of your businesses. There's a train that has left the station already. It's coming. You have basically one of two choices on this, is you either can lay down some track and influence where the train goes, or you can lay down on the tracks.
We recommend the first. Yes, that's right.
So the real question is how can you do this, and how can you do it responsibly? So if you imagine F1 cars, I guess you don't have to imagine, F1 cars are the most sophisticated cars on the planet.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, the turbocharged V6. To be competitive, those F1 racers really need every technical advantage they can have on the track. It doesn't guarantee them success, but it does deny them that success if they don't have it. Let's take 1 second and look a little bit closer.
Yeah, is there something on that car, Eric?
Yeah.
Like, zoom in on that real quick
Look a little
for me
closer.
there. Oh, it's the Pax8 logo.
look at
That's kind
that.
of cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah, what a good metaphor.
That's very nice. And, I do think that it is interesting when you look at all this, like if you were not using all the benefits there, you're really, tying a hand behind your back competitively.
That's right.
And so these F1 guys, they push the edge as far as they can because they want any kind of competitive advantage they can get.
Right.
And if you just sit out AI, like sit on the sidelines and say, I don't really want to do that, but your competitors are embracing it, you're putting yourself in a really tricky situation from a competitive standpoint.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So again, AI is a tool. It's a tool in your toolbox, and the way that you use it is the primary determiner of how successful you'll have it with it. It's one of the tools in your toolbox. Use them all. Don't be shy. Use every tool you have available to you. Your competitors are going to do it.
So when you kind of think about this like dystopian future that gets out there a lot, people never have to own up to the fact that they were wrong when they say that'll never happen, right? The naysayers say it, but then no one ever comes back and is like, you said that wasn't going to happen and it did, right? But the people who have the optimistic future, this is going to be great, this will be wonderful, they're the ones that people are like, see, this wasn't great or it wasn't wonderful. You always get the optimist gets the criticism, but the doomers never really do, right? So this is the case, though. I want y'all to be optimistic. I want y'all to push into it. I want y'all to figure this out because ultimately there's a lot of value that can come from that. But it does make sense. I think one way to kind of think about this a little bit is people that are averse to AI, and this makes great analogies given that we're here in Chicago, is there's two groups lots of times. One are the Baptists, right? And so during Prohibition, when Prohibition was a thing and alcohol was illegal, the Baptists were opposed to alcohol on moral grounds, right? They said that we do not think this is a good thing. We think this is immoral. It should be blocked. No one should have access to alcohol. The other people that were in favor of alcohol remaining illegal were the bootleggers, Al Capone from right here in Chicago. So you had the Baptists and the bootleggers, right? And the bootleggers, they made piles of money because alcohol was illegal and they were able to traffic in it, right? And so what you see sometimes is this idea where the people that are calling for regulation, that, we need to really control AI. We need to put high guardrails around AI. They're not really Baptists, they're bootleggers, right? They're the ones that want regulatory capture. This thing is so scary, so risky that only we should be allowed to do this. Who is playing in that space right now? Anthropic is coming out and saying, hey, we want to put big guardrails around this. We should be the only ones allowed to do it. And I love the more open approach that our partners here at Microsoft and others have around, hey, we want to democratize this. We want to get this out into the masses, not be the bootleggers that are trying to Al Capone-esque build a fort around this. However, this whole regulatory thing gets really, really tricky. Okay, so the current administration, they say they want to move fast on AI safeguards, and they sign an executive order to address these concerns. Well, I would like to surface a little line from this article for you here. White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients recalls Biden giving his staff a directive when formulating the order to move with urgency. We can't move at a normal government pace. We have to move as fast, if not faster, than the technology itself. Okay, what chance does government have to move faster than the technology itself? Zero, right? I mean, that's just not going to happen. So this idea is that this is going to push forward and go, and if there are regulations, they're either going to be coming too late to the market, or they're going to come so early that it stifles innovation around that. You know, one of the things that I think that people need to look at is that when things get regulated, prices go up. So everything in red on this chart are regulated industries, and as you can see, the pricing just goes up and to the right. The things that are more free market, they're on the bottom in the blue, pricing just dives down. Think about this. If, you know, the first big TV that I bought was a Sony Bravia 42-inch television, right? The thing weighed probably 300 pounds. I think it cost like $1,500, right? Just recently, I went to go buy a TV for my outside. By the way, I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm a big college football fan. Roll Tide, Alabama guy, if any of y'all want to talk about that. But I wanted a TV to put on my back patio to watch these games. I bought a 65-inch TV for $700, right? And so when you look at televisions, the prices have just come way down, way down. And so what you see around this is that an unregulated, non-governmental intervention, when the market can actually solve for that, that pricing actually goes down. And that's a very good thing, because the more democratized we can make this technology, I think the better off. You know, I was sitting there and in Satya's keynote, and when he was talking about the agentic AI, the AI agents, I'm sitting there saying, like, how much more productive can we be if all the routinized tasks that I just don't like doing, by the way, if it could do my expense reports, this would be the greatest thing ever. But all the routine tasks that we, you know, last night when we were all out, it's like, you know, who wants to like actually have to pay for something, because then you have to fill out the expense report that comes with it. So I was Teflon. I didn't want to touch it. So, but if it can do those routine tasks, that frees up time for me to do other higher value, you know, more important things. So what I want you to take away from this to some degree is this idea of this hopeful future, right? Is that it's easy to be the naysayer. No one comes back and questions them, right? You want to be the positive influence around this. And I think that what you want internally is an optimistic thing. Like, hey guys, we need to utilize this technology. There's competitive advantage. There's more fruitful work. All these things are here if we go discover, you know, how to do it, right? And then to your end user customers, I think that you want to surface these use cases that you're doing yourself, and then you can go talk to your customers and say, hey, by the way, we were doing this and we unlocked this business value. We think that that's something that you can do as well. If there's any MSPs in the room, when I talk about cybersecurity, I always say you can't sell what you don't do, right? So you have to take cybersecurity seriously yourself. Then you can go sell cybersecurity to your end user customers. Similarly, in AI, you can't sell what you're not doing. So you're going to need to take all these different Legos that Microsoft has dumped out for you, and then figure out what can I build with this that gives me real business value. And then you can productize that and then take that down to your end user customers and say, look, this is the value we created from this. This is the positive outcome that we can get. And we would love for you, Mr. Customer, to benefit in the same way that we have benefited ourselves. So when you think about that, how can this go and help potentially your MSP?
Well, if you're an MSP,
we got one. There you go.
We doubled. Well, if you are an MSP, then you probably already know how important automation can be for how you scale your business and systemization of the business as well. Your company is full of an enormous number of routine tasks that are ripe opportunities for automation in this space here. AI brings new potential and new capabilities, all these agents that we're talking about this week. I mean, we're even talking about empowering individual employees to create these themselves. I mean, Copilot Studio and those other agents, they're phenomenal opportunities for us to democratize, like you said, the creation and development of new AI capabilities within our business.
Well, and to echo that, I think this idea that, you know, corporate IT can tell you, here's all the things that our people are going to need to do, and then let's create that and hand those down. That's just not going to happen, right? So what you want is to equip your end users, to your point, to say like, okay, this is what I do, right? And this is what I can't stand doing, or this is what I don't feel I need to be doing, or this is something that can be purely automated, and then let them build that out. And again, empowering the individual employee to recognize distinct business value for themselves, as opposed to letting it have to come from on high.
That's right, and as they go through that educational journey of learning how to take advantage of AI, and they learn how to author, you know, appropriate prompts and get the right results that they're expecting out of it, they have all this opportunity to deploy that learning and educational experience against the business problems that they already have. So the way that you can learn it is by trying to solve your business problems in the first place, and that's one of the best ways to learn it. So think about it. There's all these agents that are out there, and they don't have to necessarily be superhuman agents. They can be just above average humans. They can be able to take care of tasks and so forth the same way that your tier 1 techs or other folks like that can. You have an effectively unlimited supply of these kind of agents. The challenge is to build them and find the opportunities inside of your business. So how would your sales team be different if you had an unlimited number of SDRs? Think about the technical support. What if tier 1 technical support just went away as a problem for you forever? You no longer had to hire for that. It's a powerful space. Those employees can focus on other ways to bring value to your business.
When you talk to MSPs, what you hear often from them is like, I struggle to scale. I struggle to staff enough. One of the things after 2020 is that a lot of MSPs have remote workers, where previously they didn't really have remote workers. So now what that's done is good news. That's opened up the job market where you can go hire somebody really awesome. Maybe Angelica lives like in a part of the country where you don't have an office, and you can go and hire her to work for you, in that space. The bad news is that the people in that space can come and hire your people, right? And so this idea of it's a little bit of a talent grab around, key people. But to Eric's point, if you looked at it and said, okay, I'm not limited by the 10 people I have on tier 1 service, delivery. It could be like, what if I had 1,000 people on there? And this limitless number of people that can perform these routine tasks, because if there's a ton of tickets that you are going to get that are very routine, right? It's like password resets, print spoolers, all that kind of stuff. If you can build out an agent that handles those and then repurpose your high value people onto more high value things, that is a huge win from a scalability standpoint.
Yeah, that's right. So you're already sitting on a massive amount of data about your business and about your clients. You have closed tickets, resolution statuses, reopen rates, best technical practices, onboarding experiences, sales opportunities, sales collateral. There's a lot of opportunity around that. You can take all of this, and you can, with the tools that you already have available to you today, you can create effectively a private branch of your LLM that knows your business and knows your customers better than anybody else does, better than you could probably yourself in many ways. So you can take this enormous opportunity and drive real business value out of that all the way down to the client level of detail. So the point is, you need to begin to build. You need to begin to put your hands on it. You need to begin to create new things so that you can discover what that innovation opportunity is inside of your business.
So when you really think about this kind of period of creative destruction to some degree, we've been through this before, right? So I have this slide that I show in other presentations where it's the number of elevator operators in the country. And in 1950, there were roughly 100,000 elevator operators in the country, which is a lot. And there's these articles where there were people that were scared to get on an elevator that didn't have an elevator operator on it, right? And you're like, well, that is the craziest thing. Why would anyone think that? But because they were used to, this happening. Just like I've got some friends that are kind of scared of like full self-driving, right? Well, then I always point out to them, I'm like, well, the pilot's not usually flying the plane that you're flying on either. And I'm like, okay, I don't really like to think about that. But, and then we had this same kind of panic with bank tellers when ATMs came out. You would walk in, my mom and dad were old school. They'd walk in with a check made out for cash, and get cash from the bank teller. And, my mom passed away 6 years ago, and we had to go teach my dad how to use an ATM because my mom was still taking checks for cash to the bank. We had to teach him to use ATM. But when ATMs came out, you had this fear of like, what's going to happen to all the bank tellers? And we have been through this cycle before, and we have repurposed people, our valuable people, towards other things. And ultimately, making change is not a super fulfilling task. And we've moved those people into other stuff because we've taken these routine tasks and gotten rid of them. So what I would say is that we should build as fast as we can. I mean, to me, when Satya on stage said, just a few weeks ago, he totally redid his entire, speech to focus on this agentic, AI. This stuff is moving so quick, you can't even have a PowerPoint in the can for 2 weeks, and then it's almost out of date. So I would say the quicker you embrace and the quicker you learn, then you need to stay on the forefront of that stuff. So I would say go out and build what you can internally. I think that what you'll see is a lot of startups coming out of this space. Back to earlier Eric's analogy, when this came out, Apple got rich, right? But who got really rich was WhatsApp and Instagram and all the applications that sit on top. And if you just look at AI and LLMs as this, what are the applications that you can create on top of this? Recently, I had a friend of mine who's a lawyer, and he was saying, hey, Dave, one of the things I hate doing is they bill in 6-minute increments, right? So that's 0.1 of an hour, right? Which sounds soul-crushing. Does that sound sounds soul-crushing to me, right?
Like a lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork, right? And he's like a 7-figure kind of, lawyer, but he still has to bill in 6-minute increments. And so we were talking, he's like, hey, I've been reading about this AI stuff. Wouldn't there be a way that all my emails, we use Teams calling, we have email, all this stuff, all of that's in there. Wouldn't there be a way to surface all the different people that I've talked to and give me like a suggested, billing list for the month based on who I interacted with from email and phone calls and all that kind of stuff? And I would say, yeah, man, I would think that there's something like that. Literally 2 weeks later, there was a company that did a demo of exactly that, where at the end of every month, it would spit out a billing report that he could review and say, yeah, that seems right, or no, I was talking to that guy about football, or we were talking about the weather or whatever, and reduce a little bit of that. But that type of thing, all of those applications are going to emerge based on these platforms, and that's where the real value creation is going to come. And so I would say that there's people in this room that are going to have really awesome use cases, that they're going to figure something out on behalf of yourself or behalf of your clients. And when you figure that out, I think the question then is like, could I build a business out of this? Yeah. Can we shrink wrap this and sell it to other people that have a similar use case? And I think we're going to see a proliferation of that kind of thing. Because again, if you build out some really cool agents, well, there's a chance that you could whole shrink wrap that thing up and then you could sell that to other people as a deliverable that way. So what are the takeaways that we want you to take away from today, right? Is that number one, you need to be able to embrace disruptive change. Is that this stuff is coming, whether you like it or not. Like Eric said, the train's left the station. So you can lay tracks or you can lay down in front of them, right? My recommendation is lay tracks, right? So embrace the disruptive change, okay? Find your use cases. So help your clients discover them, package those up and take them to similar clients. So if you figure out a killer use case for Copilot and law firms, how many other law firms do you have that would have similar use cases that you could take, to them? I would say advocate for less regulation and more innovation. By and large, government can't keep up with this. So I think that we tend to police ourselves pretty well on these tools. So let's push towards innovation and unlock the value and get past some of the fear that people have and show real business value that comes from that. I think that in general, we need to support big safety nets in exchange for these free markets. So to me, there's these two things that should go together, right? Radical innovation, which creates a lot of economic opportunity, and then big social safety nets, because we are going to displace and need to retrain some folks as a result of some of this. So those two things should go together. If Eric automates a plant, then he should have a responsibility to retrain the people that he just, automated the plant away from. Educate your customers just as we did with you today. I think take a hopeful message out to your customers around AI. It's like, look, this is the future. This is where it's going. Can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, so we might as well figure out a way that we want to go with it. Message of hope and opportunity, not fear and loathing. I think this is something to be very hopeful about. And then look, Pax8's here to help. So we'll be in the booth this afternoon. If you want to come by and talk to us, we'll be there. We're actively working with our partners to identify these use cases. We're actively using it ourselves. One of the cool things I think that Eric pushed in the company, we have other leaders that committed to this, is everybody in our office got Copilot early. So we were able to lean into it and use it and things like that. And once we got past making silly AI images of each other, then we figured out what the real business value around that is. So we're happy to share whatever we've learned from that. And now we're going to move into, we were calling it in our little pre-chat, the fireside chat, right? So we actually have a fire. So we can take some questions during our fireside chat. So we have some questions already, is that correct?
We do have some questions.
Okay.
Yep, and then we'll open it up to the floor.
Yeah.
All right, so obviously we don't have enough chairs, so we're just sort of having a bit of a blended look here. That was really informative and also fun, so I love listening to you guys talk. To start with, just Eric, I got a question for you. what are the common misconceptions that particularly SMBs have around AI?
It's a good question. A lot of SMBs are very nervous about it. They're nervous about what it means for their business. They don't necessarily see the potential ROI that's behind it, and they have a hard time seeing that ROI until it's somewhat deeply integrated. If you compare sort of consumer grade products against the commercial grade products like Copilot, there are some things that they will find that they prefer one tool over the other on that. And it's important that you're part of that journey with them, because the simple tools and the easy tools that are easy to realize and implement don't necessarily have the security controls or the data privacy controls in place that you need to have there as far as that goes. There's a lot of fear, like David has mentioned. There's a lot of fear out there about what it is and about what it could mean. There's a lot of people who are nervous about the future of their jobs and other things like that. I think it's a point that's worth reiterating, that the response to that should not be to ostrich and stick your head in the sand. It should be to deploy it with your users and your employees and give them the opportunity to grow this as a new skill. It's a new business skill. And in 5 years, if you say, I don't know how to prompt, then you're going to be disqualified on that statement alone.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And so I think that kind of leading into that then, Angela, I would love to understand from you, when you look at what Microsoft has done with Copilot in the SMB space, like what do you see as the common challenges that they're facing when adopting it today?
Yeah, as these gentlemen said, AI has a lot of potential for SMBs, but it also takes work. And the challenges we see tend to fall into the technical and the user enablement bucket. On the technical side, much like Eric said, a key challenge is getting the security and compliance controls in place. I'll just highlight some of the best practices we're seeing. Sensitivity labels, getting your employees to embrace that, because Copilot is designed to respect the labels and permission and rights management. Another best practice is, take the time to audit the rights of people to files to prevent oversharing. User enablement side, the challenge, I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir, AI requires a different way of working. And changing human behavior is just hard. You need both that bottoms up and tops down. From a bottoms up, you gotta train your employees. It starts with each individual. I love seeing customers, just giving them that top 10 prompts to try. Help them get started to save time so they can build that AI habit. But the last point, it's equally important too for the leaders in businesses to model being AI-powered users themselves. And also, beyond the productivity savings, when it comes to business value, it really is the leader's job to identify which business process you're going to apply AI to and get really specific about the business outcomes you want your teams to drive. So.
Yeah, and what about you, David? What do you think?
Why are SMBs scared of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fear of the unknown, and I think that SMBs don't typically have, lots of times SMBs I think are really busy, and so they don't have the free time to have that one person that's the tinkerer. Yep. Is that every company kind of needs that tinkerer, and when they're tinkering with stuff and they figure things out, and you're like, oh wait, I didn't know it could do that, and then that encourages me to go tinker. So I think SMBs lots of times just are so kind of overworked and busy, they just don't have time to tinker and figure that stuff out. I think the other thing is they know that they haven't done the data governance stuff that they should. I mean, your enterprise companies have lots of data governance policies. Your small to medium businesses just don't, right? And since I'm a cybersecurity guy primarily, I think that people looked at AI as this and cybersecurity as this, and on a Venn diagram, did they touch, did they not touch? And man, those things are a circle, right? Is that they are the same. And so unless you do that diligence beforehand to really make sure that we have the right data governance policies, that who has access to what, should they, all those types of questions, I think that a lot of SMBs kind of know in the back of their head, we haven't done the work. And if we turn Copilot loose in our data, what needles in that haystack is it going to surface, that anyone can find very easily, whereas before they would never find it in that, nook or corner of SharePoint.
Which, is just part of that hard journey. And then going back to your comment earlier around the train tracks, like, are you on one way or another? When you think about that investment into AI, what can we do to measure the ROI? Like, how are we doing that?
So to me, I think that one of my messages to the SMB, and like Eric alluded to, is that this is one of the true technological things that we've done that has an ROI to it, potentially. Whereas, you hate to say it, but like you used to have an Exchange server on-prem and then you had it in the cloud. It's really kind of hard to show ROI on that type of thing, right? And so there's all these things that we have sold over the years that were the right thing to do, but they didn't really come with a clearly defined, ROI. But if you can show that, hey, we just made our entire workforce 20%, more productive, or we took 10% of what's, considered soul-crushing work and moved it off to AI agents so these people can do stuff that doesn't make them hate their cubicle life, then that's a good thing. And you can begin to measure that type of stuff around productivity, in the workplace. So I think that there is the potential to have a very demonstrable ROI in this, that from other technology things that we've done, there wasn't the opportunity to really kind of prove it out in a clear way of, you used to do it this way, and it used to take this many people to do these things. Now you were doing this many things with the same number of people, and there's real business value creation in that.
And I'm kind of curious, so Eric, what's the ethics around AI? Like from your perspective as our Chief AI Officer at Pax8, like how do we need to consider the ethical considerations? Like there's the ROI component. What would you want to share with the audience?
Well, I mean, it's probably first important to recognize that regulation is arriving. The EU AI Act is maybe close to the gold standard of what to expect out of it, but it's still arriving in many countries all around the world. So the answer to that question is changing a little bit. But I think the core guiding principles tend to be around both the use cases and the transparency about it. So you already could do things wrong with Copilot today. If you ask certain questions about Copilot, like if you ask it to judge two different resumes against each other, you're doing it wrong. Like it has intrinsic biases that are in the underlying models, and if you're not being very deliberate and careful about undoing them for certain kinds of questions, if it would be illegal for a human to discriminate in a space, then it should be illegal for the AI to discriminate in a space as well. And then the transparency aspects of that too. We're talking about these cool tools that can do like live translation of what you're saying into another language, which just came out in Copilot this week too, right? That's cool. I didn't know about that. This is a really cool thing. Pax8 has a lot of videos that we share with our partner ecosystem. We have a lot of educational materials and other things like that. But we're an international business, but most of our educators are English speakers. We want to be able to bring this content to everybody in the world, no matter where they are, and in the most accessible way to themselves. So there's these cool tools that can like live translate things and stuff like that. But there's a lot of danger behind that as well, because I can maybe make it say something that the original person didn't say. So that's parts of the aspects of the transparency as well, is just making sure that that you're true to accurate reality, and that you're transparent about where and how you use AI in your business.
No, absolutely. And it's always one that's a little bit scary, so it's good to bring it up. And so, Angela, a question for you, like with Microsoft being at the forefront of AI as well, and so many announcements yesterday, it was phenomenal. Can you share a little bit of your perspective on the emerging trends that you're seeing within AI from where you sit inside of Microsoft?
Yeah. I think that you've heard a lot through this conference that, Copilot was about improving individual productivity, saving time, all of that. And that's great, because when you add up all that time savings, that amounts to a lot. And that might even improve your employee satisfaction, retention, etc. And then the next wave you see is then, we also work in teams and we collaborate a whole lot, right? So you're starting to see these actions and agents that almost act like a team member to help you set agendas and meetings, keep track of action items, etc. And then I think, the frontier, as these gentlemen said, and you've read about all in the industry news, we really think the future is agents, especially autonomous agents that are smart enough to learn, that you don't have to give them explicit instructions step by step. Like today, you're building a Power App, right? But they learn. But still having the human in control, the agents know when to check back with the humans when, hey, like that isn't something I quite know yet. And then through that iteration, it learns some more. But who knows? I mean, things are innovating so fast, new things coming up out in months and weeks, but that's some of what we're seeing. That's
awesome. I'm curious though, gentlemen, what do you think? With the emerging trends, what do you think is going to be? Is it all about agents, or do you think there's something else? Is it Terminator?
Oh, it's definitely not Terminator. I mean, if Arnold Schwarzenegger comes back from the future to kill us, that'll be awesome. Actually, I think that'll be kind of cool. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. But I do, for me, it's, again, wired as a cybersecurity guy, I think that the AI agent, the agentic approach is going to be super huge in cybersecurity because the threat actors are using AI to try to come after you, right? And so you can't bring a knife to a gunfight, right? And so if they're using AI agents to come after you to look like, real people and all this kind of stuff, then you need to have similar defenses built in that way. And I think, as an example, John Street is the founder of Pax8. And I got a text from him, I'm sure JP sitting out here and Lane and everybody else did, that said, I need Amazon gift cards, right? And so we obviously didn't get them. We got an email from corporate IT saying, John actually doesn't need Amazon gift cards. I replied to them. I said, well, what am I supposed to do with all these gift cards? And they're like, wait a minute, are you joking? I'm like, yes, I'm joking. So, but, I know because I fortunately have John's contact in my phone that wasn't John reaching out to me. But there's a tool called 11 Labs, right? And John's done some public speaking. So you could take John's speeches from YouTube, go to 11 Labs and get a voice AI that sounds like John. And if I got a phone call and it sounded like John, and John says, hey, I'm in trouble, I need y'all to wire me $50,000 somewhere or something like that, I'd be much more likely to act on that sounds like him versus, a text with, incorrect English and all this kind of stuff, that kind of thing. So I think that the agent space to me is going to be super interesting, both from a personal productivity standpoint. It's like, how can I create agents that do certain routinized tasks on my behalf? But then I think, writ large, it's back to her point about them kind of learning. When you're looking at cybersecurity and you're moving away from signature to anomaly detection, AI can detect anomalies a lot better than humans can. So how do you have like a SOC perhaps that is AI agent enabled at the bottom level with humans sitting on top? I think there's huge opportunity around all that.
Interesting. Okay, watch out. I did get one of those texts as well. And so, Eric, what did you think?
No, I think absolutely agents are a big part of what it will mean to be the future in the AI space. We're talking routinely about agentic AI. Agents don't really get you all the way to agentic. Agentic has a lot more autonomy to it. But it is the building blocks that you create agentic out of. And it is absolutely the first steps. Blended hierarchy of expert agents is a real thing. This is a way for you to have incredibly sophisticated capabilities without having to somehow design a bot that can do everything all at once. You subdivide the tasks and you break them up by agents and you have specializations of those skills, and then you compose them together to make the final experience to be that much more powerful because it's much more comprehensive.
Awesome. So I'm just going to ask, if it's a wrap up here before we open to the audience, if there are any questions, what would be your 1, 2, 3 go-dos after today with the audience here from what they've heard? Any ideas?
For the audience?
For the audience.
I would say go try it. I mean, if you haven't started using it yet, and look, I would say that most people kind of start using it with writing rough drafts. Right, I want to write a rough draft of something, and that's all fine. Or they're summarizing their teams, meetings, right. That's all fine. Start there, right? But once you start doing some of those things, you begin to realize that there's a lot of other stuff behind that. And also too, like on LinkedIn and on YouTube, there's individuals that are doing some amazing things with prompts that, Mark Twain said, good writers borrow, great writers steal. Right? And so find some of these prompts that people have put out there just to help the community and see how those can, work to your benefit. And then I think, after the talk the other day, I'm going to start looking into some of the agent stuff myself. It's like, okay, what are the things that I hate doing, right? And I'm sure that some of my coworkers are already trying to figure out how to create an agent that'll talk college football with me so they don't have to. But, what are some things I don't enjoy doing, and can I create an agent to do those things or make that aspect of my job easier?
That's awesome. Any other thoughts? Angelo, with regards to all the things that Microsoft can offer, what would you recommend people go do? Go check out some of the booths?
Yeah, well, I will double down on I think if you're not using it yet, start with something easy. And there's actually, we also have a free consumer Microsoft Copilot too, because sometimes it's quite fun to use it in your personal life. Admittedly, I was telling these guys I'm in the middle of playing college counselor to my kids. So, so I did use Copilot to help me brainstorm quite a bit with them. Start using, and then I think in the workplace, start sharing. You know, we talked about power users and how much we learn from each other. Get a Teams channel going or brown bags to share like the best of prompts. And then maybe lastly, yes, do visit us at the booth, and also, you know, follow us on Microsoft 365 blog, as well as our Microsoft Tech community, the Microsoft 365 Copilot channel, because there we really kind of aim to bring you like monthly the new features as well as new customer stories, especially in SMBs, because I think it's quite inspiring to see what your customers or what your peers might be doing to help you think of what's that business process that you want to start trying using AI to apply to.
I think last week y'all published like 210 new small to medium business use cases out on the web.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's really helpful. You know, it's what are other people doing? And
That's right,
you know, it
that's
can
right.
spark creativity and give somebody the opportunity just to copy it if it's beneficial to them.
Absolutely. Why reinvent the wheels?
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah, I would suggest being very deliberate about user engagement, though. There's new research that's showing that user satisfaction with AI tools is meaningfully improved if you're deliberate about the approach, about empowering and enabling your employees. And I think that is a proxy for the business value that you're getting out of it. If your employees are happy to use this tool, if they feel like their jobs are getting more efficient and more effective, then they probably are. They know the little pain points that they have throughout the course of the day, and by empowering them to self-service some of those needs, you create great opportunity for your business.
Absolutely. Well, we have a few minutes left. If there anybody like to take any questions from the audience, there is a mic up there. Feel free to step forward. We'd love to have a question. And if there isn't, there is.
we got one.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hi. So I work for an MSP, and I know you guys work with many MSPs, and just wanting to get your thoughts on, you know, how we should look at transforming our operations, our basic service desk operations, among the other services that we have, right? I mean, as far as skilling our engineers and the people that actually take the calls and and work with tickets and the clients, do you think that we should be, you know, training them differently, right, as opposed to the previous, you know, technical skills of resetting passwords and the print spooler and things like that? You know, should we be looking at training the service desk engineers to help customers with prompting, or if we've built a Copilot with Copilot Studio, how to troubleshoot that? How have you been consulting with your customers, with your MSPs about skilling and how to transform their operations to prepare?
Yeah, I think there's two kind of ways I would think about that. One is your own, to your point, your own internal team. I think there's lots of things that they can do, you know, with the data set that you have of all of your information. Are there things that they can surface about customers before you interact with them? You know, are they happy? How long they've been a customer? You know, all that kind of stuff gets you prepared for those types of things. I think as we move forward, there'll be more kind of like what Eric said, which is, okay, I've got an agent that's closing certain tickets, and a ticket comes in from a certain customer, and it can look at reopen rates, all this kind of stuff. So every time this guy closed it reopened. Every time that guy closed it stayed closed. So let's use this guy's closing method versus this other one and that kind of stuff and make it more efficient from that standpoint. I do think the challenge a little bit, I think for MSPs who talk to their end users, is to some degree this is really not technology. This is really like business process re-engineering. And so it's going to be a little bit of an unnatural conversation, I think, for a lot of MSPs to have with their end users, which is going to be much more around kind of like, how are you doing this now? What's the business outcome you're trying to get? And then having enough creativity to figure out, is there a better way to accomplish this outcome given the tools that are available, you know, to you? And so I think whether your guys are using it and just getting like outstanding results or not, I think the idea is that they're using it enough so that then they can play a little more of that consulting role to end users. Because I do suspect where if you're like me when I was at an MSP, you know, we're not going to help you write a pivot table if you call into the support desk, right? That's usability stuff. But you may end up in a case to where it makes sense for you to offer to help them with prompts or creating, you know, agents and stuff like that, which is going to be a little bit different business motion than you're probably used to.
Yeah, and I would also say don't underestimate the value of an agent pointed at one SharePoint folder with high quality content in it. That is insanely powerful. That alone will transform a lot of tech support operations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last call. We have 1 minute left. If anybody would like to ask a question, please do. Otherwise, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone here and for putting up with my voice. And we look forward to seeing many of you come by and have a conversation. And let's keep that conversation going around AI, because I feel like this is just the beginning of so much more. So have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.